So the Grammy nominations are in.
To quote Noxema Jackson, whoopee!
I mean, at this point, I just don't. I don't have much of a stake in anything that they're gonna do. It's interesting seeing the people that still are super invested in it and really want their favorite artists to get their nominations. And I just, at this point, I'm so aware of all of the politics involved in how things land, and a lot of times those politics happen in such a way that they even screw over the artists they wouldn't want to screw over, like when The Weeknd didn't get any nominations and he was like the biggest artist of the year, and then now he's like boycotting and he's never gonna submit or I think perform at the Grammys ever again. Things like that just happen because of how just completely fucked up the whole process is. So I have nothing for it. It's cool to see the people you like get nominations when it happens, but
I mean, the only thing I have a quasi investment in really is more out of just because it's what I write about so much, the gospel nominations. And I was particularly disappointed by the Roots Gospel category because it was all white folks. And
it is usually. It usually is. I feel like the last couple years have been anomalies. Yeah. We got Gloria Gaynor winning, and that was pretty cool. And she was the first black winner, I think, since they've, compiled all these awards. And, they just got rid of everything. They got rid of special award categories for traditional gospel, for gospel choirs.
That's right.
For bluegrass gospel. And so they just kind of, smushed all these artists together. And anything that's rooted in some semblance of the original sound of gospel might fall under that category. And
well, I'm really clear, like the other gospel categories, both the CCM and the gospel categories are ageist. And so if you are over a certain age, you just aren't going to find yourself in that category.
Yeah.
And this praise and worship crap has just really taken over the entire genre.
Yeah.
Of both contemporary Christian and gospel. I mean, it's really, which is what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. But that was the other thing that really just kind of sickened me about the nominations was I just felt like, so if you're an artist over a particular age doing a particular sound that Mary Clayton did not get a nomination in the Roots Gospel category. And granted, her record was kind of pushing all of those boundaries because there was some contemporary things on it. But ultimately, where else is Mary Clayton going to be put? Mm-hmm. Unless they put her in like the mainstream category somewhere, but which they weren't going to do.
Right.
I mean, Roots Gospel was really the only place for that record to go. And I've really got to say, Motown Gospel just completely sucks in that way. Yeah. So burning myself out of any kind of connection there in terms of accessibility to artists. But it's just an awful label.
Yeah, what most people don't realize is for something to get nominated, the label or the artist, if they're independent, they have to submit their work for nominations. And then there is the whole like campaign for your consideration and try to get, the Academy members to nominate them. And so, I think a lot of the times we're upset that something didn't get nominated when it wasn't even submitted in the first place. And that may be the case with that album.
I mean, that's my guess because I saw nothing on her social media about For Your Consideration. And, I just thought, what a loss, because if anybody deserves to be in that category for really what was a great album, especially after aside from a gospel record in the 90s, I mean, a 30-year absence from her. So, I was done.
Yeah. And, the other thing with the Grammys, I kind of see the Grammys and the Oscars kind of playing the same kind of weird game of, well, we have to honor the biggest albums that came out in these respective genres. And they're wanting to, make sure that the big names are in the audience, or if they accept the award, that it, makes for, I guess, some kind of ratings, boost, even though I think year over year, the Grammys consistently just are so not watched on television because nobody cares anymore. But then there's this other thing of they want to have this prestige thing. And I think a lot of the members of the Academy nominate or vote for the kinds of albums that they think other people think are prestigious. It's like a weird thing. It's like, not even if I don't necessarily love it, some piece of me thinks that this is some kind of critically acclaimed work or some kind of highbrow album or song, and therefore that's what should be nominated, even if I don't necessarily think so. I think other people in my social group think that. Well, and so it ends up being this odd like collection of like 2 or 3 albums that were super popular, and then like 2 or 3 albums that are like, what even is this? Why was this nominated? Nobody talked about this album all year. No, and it's not even that great, but it has that like, oh, it's jazzy, or oh, it's whatever, and so it has this kind of, again, this like highbrow, prestigious thing, that elitist music thing.
Well, I will say, I mean, there were times when that was fun. I mean, back in the late 80s when Bonnie Raitt won for Nick of Time, and nobody thought that was going to happen. Because that was, she was, under the radar at that point. And I don't want to get the story wrong, but anyway, she had like been through the end of one record deal. Nick of Time was kind of like a, this is your shot moment. And really, it wasn't until the nomination process that album even moved into anybody's radar. And so I love that there are times when that has worked, when great albums then get visibility. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's weird. Like like the Herbie Hancock thing. Like, remember when he did the Joni Mitchell?
Yes.
Yeah, and it was good. But it was like, really? That's... okay. And I think that's what that was. It was, here's this guy who has never had that kind of thing happen for him before. He's got this prestigious thing, and now he's done this work that's like bringing all this together. And I think everybody voted for it in that way because they felt like it should be the thing that would win, even though there were other albums that were nominated that were bigger and probably more impactful just on music as a whole, as we look back on works that came out that year and how they've influenced. But I think that's the other thing with the Grammys. It's so short-sighted, and it's never really looking at, is this the kind of project that we'll be talking about 10, 20, 30 years from now? And it's why works that make the greatest songs of all time, the greatest whatever, are things that have consistently been overlooked by awards.
Well, and I'll just say this, and then we can move on to the subject. But I also that's also a huge pause for me with the Grammys, because I personally have seen a lot of people that I know now become voting members.
Yeah.
And I go, I don't trust your judgment. And so, at all, I don't trust your judgment. Like, you're voting for your friends. That's what you're doing.
Right.
And so, yeah, I just feel like the quality control is not what it used to be.
Yeah, because I know, like, if I were going to take that seriously, if I were to like join and do that whole thing, knowing me and knowing how I am with just anything, I would be the person that would listen to each and everything.
That's right.
And like go out of my way to be really impartial and go like, what do I believe is truly the best work? And these people don't do that.
No.
None of these people, they don't even listen to half the things.
No.
And they just mark whatever.
Names.
It's name recognition. So it's why the same people win over and over again, especially in the smaller categories. Over and over again, even if what they put out is garbage or, it's just not even up to their best quality. And it really does become a name game.
Yeah. That's my diva story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, renegade through and through. Oh, renegade through and through. Oh, Lord, if you only knew. Now tell me, what do I do? And if what I say is true, how could I get through to you? I don't know how to behave. I don't know how to behave. And if I don't change my ways, it might send me to my grave. But if what I say is bad, maybe we could all be saved.
All right. Welcome to Outlaws, Evidence of the Unseen, exceptional stories and conversations that weave history, religion, arts, and politics into the fabric of our greater cultural narrative. I am Ray Curenton, singer, songwriter, and producer.
I'm Tim Dillinger, historian, writer, storyteller, sometimes singer.
All right. And if you like the show, be sure to subscribe and tell everyone you know to tune in as well. And if you feel so inclined, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. This helps more people find us. And today we are going to talk about something that we talk a lot about all the time, and felt like it was important, I guess, to make as one of our earlier episodes, because I feel like it's going to come up in more and more conversations because it just is a continual, ongoing conversation in our home. And that is all about praise and worship music. And Tim just made a face.
This is not an impartial conversation.
It's not.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's talking about praise and worship music and how its infiltration into the Christian and gospel music landscape has completely altered the course of the genre, and on that level has informed the politic of not just the music, but of what being a modern Christian looks like.
It's like COVID. I would compare it to COVID. And how
The new normal?
Then it's the new normal, yeah.
So I'm trying to think of a way to, because I'm thinking of the people who are listening to this show and probably don't even know what we mean when we separate praise and worship music from other Christian music, other gospel music. And so or they just, they probably don't even listen to the music. And so what, if you could explain what praise and worship music is specifically and what makes it different from just contemporary Christian music or gospel music, and why that difference matters.
Well, in short, I don't know if you want me to give like the little history piece here in terms of
we can get into the history later, but just kind of as a framework.
Well, in short, praise and worship music really originated as contemporary church music. I'll say it like that. So when you're in and I will say it like this, a white church experience. This was not a black church phenomenon at all. So there were these little choruses, they're like little mantras, these little songs that they would sing in service, but people would leave church and this was not the music they wanted to just play in their car all day long. So contemporary Christian music evolved as like a form of pop music. So you were still getting like traditional singer-songwriter, verse, chorus, bridge out songs that got played on the radio. And, we'll get into the history of how it originated and all of that later. But for the last 30 years or so, late 90s, so maybe a little less, probably like 25 years, this has become the music that became dominant on the airwaves.
Yeah, synonymous with Christian music. And what makes it, because I'm thinking of people who, either grew up or even still like go to church and sing hymns. And like the difference between that and what praise and worship music now is in many churches.
Yes.
As that congregational music. And you're talking about then contemporary Christian music outside of that being, it's not like people were playing hymns in the car, singing them around the house necessarily, or to that extent, praise and worship songs.
Right. And there was definitely, and again, this is part of the history, there was definitely the availability of that music for them to purchase and listen to in that way if they wanted to. But it is not what was the dominant seller. It was not what people really wanted to listen to all day long. And so what started happening in the 90s, this music became really, I mark Michael W. Smith's album as like when it completely like crossed over the edge, and this became the music that artists started doing as their art, as their albums. And so, there's an entire generation now that knows nothing but this music as the norm. And that's troubling to me because they don't know what to do with, actual songs when they hear them.
Well, what defines the sound or compositional structure of praise and worship music that makes it different?
Well, these days, for the white folks in particular, it's very much like just listening to YouTube, but with these really, ethereal, sadomasochistic lyrics about the things you want God to do with you, to you, I can't breathe without you, suffocate me, Jesus, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very saturate me, infiltrate me, take me over, no more of me. It's
Shift the atmosphere.
Yeah, yes. It's very Harry Potter for Jesus.
Yeah. There's not much of a narrative beyond talking to God, and even that conversation isn't very complex.
Well, no,
because it's just telling him things about himself.
Yes.
Exalting him and over, and then they always go back to the Psalms and how the Psalms just edify and exalt the Most High, and so that's what we need to be doing all the time, is just talking to God and telling him how wondrous he is and how amazing he is, but also asking him to visit, I guess, the room,
the room.
and change how it feels, make it more elevated spiritually, make it some enchanting encounter, and also a lot of self-deprecation.
Yes.
A lot of diminishing of the humans in the room, or the human beings singing. And because we must elevate or make God greater than us, it then means that we have to replace me, Lord, with you. And we're not worthy to be in your presence, but you love us somehow anyway. A lot of that over and over again as well.
Yet, as they stand on the big rock concert stage with lights and, big swirling, clouds of smoke and all of that, that's all happening, because it's completely self-depreciating yet also narcissistic all at the same time.
Yes
It's really, I don't want to use any medical terms because I don't want to offend anybody, but it is really not balanced.
Yeah. You talk about the YouTube thing. Sometimes there are verses, but usually it really just does feel like one long vamp.
Yeah.
It's just a chant that we're going to say over and over again, and then maybe it turns into a second chant.
Oh yeah, the spontaneous.
Over and over
there's
again.
The spontaneous worship too.
And the going back and forth, and and then a lot of ad-libbing over what's being said, which is really just again regurgitating a lot of the rhetoric we just talked about, or specific scriptures. They call it exhorting. Exhorting. And musically, we are talking just bottom shelf chord structure, chord progressions.
2 chords.
3 chords. Tim likens them to nursery rhymes because of just how simplistic the music is. I remember a lot of synth strings as a child.
Oh, very much.
Yeah,
very much. Which, of course, when worship made its way into the Black church, that became a really big thing. Thank you, Juanita Bynum.
Yes.
Don't forget to reference episode number 2 where we do discuss this. But yes,
yeah.
The synth strings were the real sign of he was there. He's here.
Yes.
He's here. Don't you feel like you're in the King James version
somehow
right now?
that synth string just is just the floodgates have opened, and
glory.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Do you smell it? Do you smell the holy scent of his?
No, but I see gold dust.
All right, that was bitchy. Anything else we need to talk about just in terms of framing what it is before you start digging more into the history, I guess?
Well, no. I mean, I think my biggest beef is not even, I don't get it and I don't appreciate it. I don't care for it. And we can get into later, I have whole problems with just the theology of the concept of worship in that way. Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother conversation, but I don't even care that they have it. That's fine. You can have it. Why does it have to be the only thing?
Why does it have to be the only thing? It's like Tyler Perry's monopoly on black cinema. It's like, okay, sure. If that's the thing you feel like is just so entertaining and you love it and you can't get enough of it, fine. Why is that the only thing that gets budgeted? Why is it the only thing that gets distributed? Was it the only thing that gets any kind of recognition? And it's the only thing we see in here.
Well, and I will delve into. I mean, I think that's part of the history too. I think the reasons that is what it is today have a lot to do with the past, and we can talk about that. But it is
like
the
outside of me finding it problematic, just from a theological standpoint or a psychological standpoint. If you want to have it, sure, but why is it the only thing we ever see now?
Well, and Dr. Leah Payne, who you should find her on Twitter and Instagram. She's actually writing a book about contemporary Christian music right now for an academic press. It's wonderful work that she's doing. But she shared an article this past week about a study with worship leaders about the life of worship songs becoming shorter and shorter. That where we used to, create standards, there were standard songs that came out of CCM that actually made their way into worship services back in the 80s that lived for like 30 years. Now the life term of these songs is like barely months at this juncture because they're constantly needing new material. So there's also, it's almost like the streaming model converging with the worship trend has also shifted the ways that churches are selecting music. And so it's not even about giving people continuity, these songs that stay with them for a lifetime, like that's over.
Well, and I do think the streaming era has completely ruined, because there's this need to constantly view music as content and be constantly generating more and more of it. And so you're now seeing these worship collectives, these troops of all these different praise and worship leaders, and they're constantly workshopping and making all these new songs and generating all this output, the Hill songs, the Evolution worships, the Maverick City music, and I want to talk about them later, and how problematic I think they are. But you see them, constantly putting out new albums, new EPs, new live versions of the songs, and, generating more and more songs. And it really does go to show that prolific really does just mean a lot of output. It really doesn't necessarily mean a lot of quality output, because at a certain point, there's only so much you can say within those confines of exhorting God, diminishing you as a human being, and, needing to set the atmosphere for his visitation. It's just, hasn't it all been said at a certain point?
Well, and I have something else to say about that, but I'll hold it because it's connected to other things. Yeah. There's reasons that this is the dominant music.
Yeah.
And there are, I'm always going to be the person that's like, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's stand up and look over this. Why is this what they want you to be doing with your time? And by they, I mean the gatekeepers, the people that are selling you this music, the people that are in partnership with your pastors to play this music in your church so that you then want to hear it all day long. And make this a lifestyle, like the whole concept of worshiping. I mean, when worship is now an identity worshiper, I hate it. I really hate it. I'm a worshiper. And really, that's wonderful. What does that mean? And what does that do for anybody?
Well, and it really connects to the whole, it's not a religion, it's a relationship thing. It is that need to, it's not enough to just be a Christian. It's not enough to just attend church. It's some kind of extra identity, some kind of bonus brownie points, princess points that you are getting by saying that, you somehow have some stronger connection with your higher power than everybody else, or than just the regular lay member.
Yes.
All right. So, did you want to talk about the history stuff now? Is there more to?
Well, I think it's kind of important to look at the roots of this music and where it really originated. So it came out of in the late 60s. Hippies started converting to Christianity.
Yes, and we're going to talk even more extensively about Jesus
The Jesus
music
movement,
and
yeah.
the movement in another episode. But yeah, we can kind of give a taste of that now.
So these young people started converting to Christianity, and they were actually not welcome in churches. So they would go to churches and they would be told they couldn't come in. I mean, I've documented some of these stories in my writing, like of artists even inviting Jesus people to come see them at a church, and they would get turned away at the door. So this was a norm back then, ways that white congregations monitored who had accessibility to their churches.
Not come as you are.
Not come as you are. Come, basically, if you look a particular way, which signals to us that you're in a particular economic place as well. And so these young people started gathering on their own and making their own music to sing, and they were largely choruses. One of the big ones that, people still circulate or used to circulate, I was going to say to this day, probably not anymore, was the Alleluia chorus, which Benny Hinn has made infamous.
I was going to say they do because of Benny Hinn.
Yeah.
Benny Hinn, yeah.
But that was, one of the early choruses of the movement. And, those kinds of songs were what they were singing, largely with acoustic guitars. And there was a church in California, Calvary Chapel, that ultimately let these young people completely shift their church. And they invited them in. They started singing their songs. They let them come in barefoot and in their torn up jeans and however they showed up. And they, of course, being business people, the church started a label in 1971 called Maranatha Music. And they really were like the first to recognize this music was sellable and that they could do something with it. And so they formed a label called Maranatha Music that was not exclusively worship music, but it was like the Jesus music bands that were writing some of the songs. And so anyways, they really, over the course of the 70s, became a force.
Yeah.
And were distributed by word.
And this was like a time when printed music was such a huge industry too. And so, to have hymnals be an industry itself. And then to have, songbooks and things of the Christian, and to go, okay, well, this is going to be in everybody's church because everybody's going to want to sing these songs.
That's right.
Yeah, that's bank.
And that was their huge part of their money was the books.
Yeah.
I mean, they just had, these spiral bound books that had the sheet music in it. And so these choruses made their way into churches all around the world. It's important to note one of their early signees was Children of the Day, who now, like the first real CCM lesbian, Marcia Stevens Pino was one of the chief writers of that group. She was on Maranatha Records.
It always comes back to the gays, doesn't it? Yeah.
And she was not, of course, she was married at the time to a man. She wrote one of the central songs of the Jesus movement for these Tears I Died. Anyways, I think it's important just to note she was a part of this movement.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I think is really important about what Maranatha did, though, was it was not a big leap for them to realize, we should also be doing children's music. So, because in my mind, and you said this before, like worship music is children's music.
Yes.
And so they were responsible for Salty and Kids Praise, like these children's musicals that, and again, largely white spaces, were huge in the 80s.
I totally forgot about Salty.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Hold on. I gotta look this up now. Like I'm having a piece of my brain being triggered right now.
He was a singing hymnal.
What an odd looking thing. Like it wasn't even, was it blue? Why was it blue?
We did this at my school. Like I am scarred by Salty and the Kids Praise songs. But what they were.
It looks like a raisin, but just more boxy. Like I don't even think children, like I certainly as a child wasn't fully connecting like, oh, it's a book of song. Like it just, yeah, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, these were also worship songs. So they get these children singing these worship songs as well. And so these were like spring musicals and those kinds of, they became events. And so Christian schools were doing them with their children's choirs and youth groups were doing this at their churches. And so it becomes a whole nother enterprise. But what are they doing? Largely worship music.
Yeah.
And so Maranatha, they were like a seller. Like they stayed consistent. But again, they weren't competing with the sales of like Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith.
Right.
You know, those pop music really was king still.
The demographic was separate.
Yes. But where it all changed, and I would really love to know. So Integrity Music came along in 1987.
Okay.
And what they did was...
Which is an interesting year because...
The Baker scandal.
Yeah, Baker scandal. Amy Grant had like really crossed over at that point.
Yep.
And other artists had really crossed over at that point.
Yes. And so with the Baker scandal happening, I've always said that was like the central moment because CCM, with the demise of PTL, contemporary Christian music really lost its main gateway into Christian people's televisions, you know, into their homes in that way.
Yeah.
If they weren't listening to Christian radio already, which played that kind of music, the PTL Club really was the place where a lot of people were discovering contemporary Christian music. And they actively worked to promote it. And I've said this before, they were not the version of Jim Baker that we see today. The PTL Club was actually seen as really liberal at that time. So Integrity Music, right in the vortex of the Baker scandal, they start a music club. So they come out of nowhere. And I remember my grandparents had the subscription. So churches would pay, they'd get one cassette a month.
Oh, so like the Columbia House.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So you pay a certain amount of money every year. You get a tape every month. I want to say you also got some of the materials with the lyrics and stuff in addition. And so their production, to me, was a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive and edgy because it was not aggressive in that sense, but it was more upbeat maybe is the way than Maranatha was.
Gotcha.
And they also had a central leader on every tape. So it wasn't just like a chorus of people singing choruses. You had a praise and worship leader. And so they start doing these releases every month. And these songs then started making their way into churches in a different way than Maranatha because they're being like force-fed at this point. Because churches are saying also, if I'm paying for this service, guess what we're going to do?
Right.
We're going to sing these songs because we're spending money on this.
Yeah.
And
so these were the Hosanna.
Yeah, this was Hosanna Integrity.
Yeah.
And soon they then moved away from the club model and they just became a full force label. And they had major distribution and they were responsible for bringing us like Ron Canoli, Don Moen.
Well, I would imagine the Christian bookstores helped make that more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
there was they had their own section. And it became a whole thing. And so then what started happening was this was like the beginning. And Ron Canoli was really the bridgeway of taking worship music then into the black church.
Yes.
And he was really the beginning of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was the beginning of that.
We grew up singing lots of his stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's just all gone downhill from there. But that's how it ended up becoming what it is. And so what I wanted to say about, Integrity also and how it became what it is today in terms of it being the dominant music is that in 1987, when the PTL scandal happened, the Christian gatekeepers really did decide, this crossover stuff y'all are doing has got to stop. Because, this Baker scandal and then a year later, the Jimmy Swaggart scandal, like it brought too much attention to the church. And so they brought everything inward. And so what then became the model for non-worship music was like groups like For Him, Point of Grace, like very slick, clean cut. These were the A&B selection people that would come to your church services and your conferences and sing. They were not trying to get up on a stage at a theater.
Right.
And sing for the world and draw people in.
Yeah.
And so it completely shifted the attention of who the Christian music industry was trying to reach. And so the church really became the core audience. And that wasn't the case before.
Yeah.
You had the brief little crossover model in like 91 where we had Amy Grant and Baby Baby. We had Michael W. Smith and Place in This World and Kathy Tricoli with Everything Changes and BB and CC. And like a year later, they were done. And CC, honey, was alone in his presence. And she really then jumped on board.
Yes.
She jumped on board.
Definitely it as a sustainable model for her.
And started her own label. Then she brought us Vicky Yowie. Need I say more?
Yeah.
And so it's become just more and more the thing as the church has become, the mega church has become the norm.
Yeah.
And back then the mega church was the exception.
When did the whole like platforming the praise and worship leaders on like, was that what they were always doing? The integrity Hosanna thing?
Not initially, but it grew into that rather quickly because
yeah, I'm thinking of like the shout to the Lord.
Oh yeah,
like,
Hillsong. Hillsong came through integrity.
Yeah.
And so yes, you get the whole Hillsong model, then you get Israel and Newbury,
Yes.
Gungor, and these people all became stars. And so here's the other thing I want to say though too, is that in the 80s and early 90s, we had, if you were a listener of contemporary Christian music, you had singer-songwriters that were not just making you worship, do the worship songs, but they were writing songs about their questions and their thoughts on theology. And what has happened, what time has proven, is that those of us that came through that, most of us have left. And I will always argue that it was the singer-songwriters that gave us the space to evaluate it all, to think about why we believed what we believed.
Yes.
And so what they've realized is, oh yeah, this music makes people leave. This music makes people think too much. And so we're just going to give them, they're going to have to saturate themselves in it and let it become the only thing they do. And they don't get a moment to think for themselves.
Yes.
And so I really, for that reason, I see worship music as quite dangerous.
Definitely, because, I mean, Christian music, period, music, period, you know, Christians, because they're constantly being so overly, they're overly scrutinizing all media that comes in.
Yes.
There's a special magnifying glass over music and lyrics and what's being said, and if those words are edifying God or not edifying God, and if they're biblical or if they're not biblical. And so, yeah, that was such a thing with you know, Christian music, CCM, contemporary music that was coming out. And so those like questioning songs, all that was just, you know, held to such a firm hand. And then, so then the praise and worship music on a level answers that, but it's all because of that, then it is even more highly ultra scrutinized.
Yes.
And it has to go through the filter of, and there's been like little controversies that neither of us care about, but just about like the biblical nature of a song like Donnie McClurkin's "We Fall Down," or you know, like, you know, dumb things like that, where, you know, is that really biblical?
Right.
Is that really, you know, edifying to God? You know, the songs about the Holy Spirit falling down. Does the Spirit really fall down? Or is God's, you know, is the Spirit in us? Is he already here? Why are we asking him to come? Come by here, Lord, if he's already here. Things like that, just constantly pecking and pecking and pecking. And so, yeah, the praise and worship music would be a great answer to that. If you're recruiting, quote unquote, songwriters who are already doing that work for you, the self-policing of whether or not the song can work in as many congregations as possible. But what that does is completely dumb down what can be said. Because if you step outside of that box, what works in this charismatic church may not work in that insert denomination church. And you want it to be as universal as possible, but also biblical.
Well, and I also really love when, you know, people who aren't from this world hear worship music and have conversations with us and are like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
I don't want to know what that means. It's actually like repellent to people that aren't in the culture. And so there's just to me, it's contradictory that this is the only thing you do when you are allegedly, well, and I would actually argue they don't actually want to bring anybody else in. I think.
Well, and I think that definitely shows the difference in mission and what you're talking about when you were talking about like crossover versus bringing everything in, and really the CCM contemporary gospel model, in my mind, was always about outreach.
Yes.
It was about using that music to connect with youth and teens and, you know, people that maybe grew up in the church but aren't in it anymore, or, you know, just have no idea at all what any of this might be about, and showing them a life, a lifestyle, a way of being, a way of viewing the world that might appeal to them. Whereas the praise and worship music has nothing to do with outreach at all. It is about reaffirming for people that are already in that bubble, in that box, making them feel more important.
One of the biggest qualms I have with worship music is the whole concept of what that means. Like, what does it mean to worship? Because I think that we've actually really flubbed up the entire idea of worship as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because I really am not interested in a narcissistic God that needs to hear about himself all day long, or themselves all day long. I just can't even... The older I get, the more ridiculous of a notion that is. And I think, well, you need more to do. Because if that's, and by you, I mean God, like, if that's what you need to be happening all the time, what's wrong with you?
Delights in the praises of his people.
And I would actually argue that what that could actually mean is that God would actually delight in us being kind. God would actually delight in us having introspection and working to be better people in the world, working to, make an impact on people. And that doesn't mean converting them. It just means being a friend, being compassionate, being
living out the fruit of the Spirit, allegedly.
Yeah, that would be worship to me, and not this cloud of, whatever that is they experience when they do that.
You're greater than everything, Lord. You're greater than all of our problems.
And I don't really know what that does for anybody. And so I hear lots of talking about it, but I don't believe anything they say. Because, again, the fruit speaks for itself. The church would not be in the position it's in. The church is in a shit show as we speak. And I laugh because it has become more and more of a shit show as they have done this crappy music through the years. And so clearly it is not doing anything to help them along or think through. It is only accelerating their crash.
As they like to pretend, or as they reiterate over and over and over again, that music is somehow way better or somehow more affirming, more liberating, more whatever, freeing them to really be connected to God than the music that came before. If they even remember the music that came before. But there is a sticking the nose up at, traditional gospel,
And that's cross-cultural. The white folks do that, and the black church has done that. I mean, there is if I hear one more critique of Lord, Don't Move the Mountain, from friends that grew up in the black church, it's just like, do you understand, like, the context of that song and what that means? And that there's actually, like, it's actually about fortitude. That's what that song is actually about. And no mountain is magically moving. Right.
It's also being realistic.
It's realistic. Yeah. And so, like, you may not want to say it, but the mountain's still going to be there. So, get to climbing. And so, that's cross-cultural. There's this whole, like, looking back at the past. I mean, they look at the CCM folks like they were just the most fleshly, worldly, self-absorbed people as they get in church with their lattes today and their, pleather and do their worship music. So, and I know that a certain part of that is generational. I know that there was a contingency of artists in the 70s and 80s that thought what they were doing was so much more ahead of, I know that's
just, I'm not my ancestors. But also, no, what you're saying, because there is also this notion, and we're going to get into that when we talk about, like, positivity culture and all that shit, but there is this sense of, if the music isn't the secret, if I'm just speaking about things as they are, then where's the faith? Where's the faith to make the music, align with what God wants for me, which is to overcome the situations. And so for my mom, it's coming up the rough side of the mountain. Why would I want to confess that? Well, is that what's going on, or isn't it? We've been through some things. We need to talk about the hardship.
Yeah. You might need to put your mountain climbing boots on for a little while.
Yeah.
And so I also feel like worship music is responsible for the detachment from reality that we see so much in, like, largely church people who have, fallen into, have run towards QAnon. There's just a detachment from reality, and I can't help but connect that to these unrealistic messages,
Yeah.
that they get in the songs and the sermons. And it's all about this worship as a lifestyle where that becomes the only way they think and view life.
And if you're constantly only looking up at God, you're not bothering to look around at each other or deal with the material world that we're living in and figuring out how we might solve some problems here, because your only concern is about reaching the next plane.
Yeah.
Going to the next dimension.
Yes. Of the glory cloud.
Yeah. There's also the ramifications, the praise and worship ramifications on what kind of singer gets platformed.
Oh my God. Yes.
And what that means as we look at what kind of gospel artist is now a viable, successful gospel artist that gets the deal, that gets the, radio play. And yeah, it totally shifted to a certain extent the even sound of the voice.
Completely.
And I see that even more so on the white side, the CCM side, than on the gospel side. But the gospel side, it's, happening. But also, again, this lifestyle
Yes.
that the person on that stage has to sell back to the
Yes.
audience.
Yes.
And how they go about performing, because they don't want to call it performing. They don't want to call being on that stage a stage. But that's what it is. It is still getting up on stage and performing something. And what is that performance? And it's, again, needing to be someone who exhorts in that kind of way. The ad-libbing isn't what ad-libbing was in gospel. Now it's, all about regurgitating the verses, and again, that replace me, Lord, with you, and we are nothing but you step in and you're the almighty presence. Just saying that over and over again. It's having to do that, which then shuns anyone that can't do that or doesn't want to do that, or is used to a more traditional way of doing.
Well,
yeah.
It becomes an indicator of another person's lack of spirituality in their mind, because you're not willing to perform it for them in that way.
Yeah, and then it creates an impossible standard. We joked because we saw an article a couple weeks ago. I guess they're experimenting now with...
Go finish the sentence so they know what we're talking about.
They are experimenting with AI worship leaders, right?
Yes. What it should have been all along.
Are they going to be holograms? I didn't really click in and read the article, but I just go, you know what? If any genre needs that...
Yeah.
Or if any genre, if that could work anywhere, absolutely. Because the music's already so formulaic.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're creating such an image, this impossible, perfect standard of what being a praise and worship leader really looks like.
Yeah.
A minister of music. And we see over and over again scandals from these people because they can't, they're just people. They have the same stuff we all have. And they have the added baggage and stress, as we talked about with, sexual, just repression, what that does and how that then, it's absolutely a setup. So yeah, have your AI robot singers. That would do really well if that's what you want to have.
But to your point, I really do lament the lack of voice. That we really do not get to hear just skilled singers. There will never be, I'm going to put these two together. It's kind of an odd pairing, but we're never going to have a Sandy Patty and a LaShawn Pace again. The days of people that were just incredible interpreters, because there's no material for those people in that genre anymore. Nobody's buying that. Nobody's interested in that. And it actually, the idea of soloists in that way, singers, is seen as being self-absorbed. There's a whole perception of that as grandiose.
Yeah.
Making yourself the center. And if you're not part of some frickin' worship collective,
right,
with 600 people on the stage jumping around, you're just too about yourself.
Yeah.
And so I really grieve just the lack of voice that we get anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. And I'm also gonna lament the fact that the imperfect voice also doesn't have a place. The interpreter who may not be the beautifully toned singer, but is going to sing with some real feeling. I mean, we've really completely lost, and that grieves me, gospel's connection. I'm really just
Totally.
specifically talking about the black church now, but gospel's connection to the blues.
Yes. Yes.
Again, because we're not allowed to sing the blues. We're not allowed to sing about coming up the rough side of the mountain.
Right.
And so, why would an Albertina Walker, if anyone sounds like that in the church today,
They got nowhere to go.
where are they going to go?
Nowhere. And you raise such an important point, because I talked with my godmother in St. Petersburg maybe a month ago, and she's 70 something now.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what do you think about the music now? And she was like, oh, it ain't like what we did. She was like, it's all over.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sing. They don't sing like we used to sing. They don't sing the songs we used to sing. And she was like, it's just for the young people now. And we came from a place that everybody in the community had a voice. We still had, in the early 90s, we were still having testimony service. And so
Yeah.
you could stand up in church, start a song, everybody would join in and help you sing it. Everybody felt connected to that. And everybody had a voice, and not everybody could sing, and that was okay, because it was about what they needed to say and what they wanted to sing. And praise team life. And I hear these bitchy ass worship leaders all the time. I have friends who, work in the church, and what they look for in singers to be on that platform, you would think they were going to the Grammys, the kinds of voices they want to have, and excellence. And I just go, you can have all that excellence, y'all still got shitty songs.
Yeah.
Y'all still doing, it's a horrible model, and all these people feel excluded.
Yeah.
I'll always go back to the last time I sang in a church. We sat through all these worship songs that morning. I will never forget it. And I got up and just did some old school songs, real songs, like the hymns, He Looked Beyond My Fault, Shine on Me, those kinds of songs. And this lady came up to us after the service, and she said something to the effect of, I don't relate to all that stuff they're doing, but that I relate to. And she was not that much older than me.
No.
And so I just feel like there's an entire segment of people that feel they just keep showing up because it's just what you do. But they don't feel connected to it. And eventually those people are going to leave, and I feel like COVID was probably a huge break for people, because it gave them permission to stop going.
Yeah. And, there's a contingency of millennials. I'm seeing like Gen Z kids now, like repeatedly. And it's funny because you a piece of you rolls your eyes when you see them do this. But another piece of me kind of is like hopeful, because they're like discovering, especially with this long tail of a Spotify or an Apple Music and YouTube, they may stumble across or go on a bunny trail if they're that curious and discover old songs. And I'm seeing this happening in the pop and rock world, where they're going, like they're finding old music from like the 60s and 70s. And they're like, oh my God, that music's so great. Like they're loving it. They're loving it because they're getting stuff that they, are not getting today in today's music. And, a piece of me wants to be hopeful that things like that might happen for the children, the youth that are still in these churches, that they may go back and connect with this old Christian music, this old gospel music, and go, wow, who knew music could be made this way as a Christian?
Yep.
One can dream.
One can dream. I mean, I think all the time about all the great music that I got to grow up on. And what I find, sadly, particularly with like ex-evangelicals and people that have migrated out of the church, is that there's so much resentment about what it was that there's not even a lens to be able to go back and listen to some of the other things that were made during that time that weren't the messaging there's just not even the ability. They're so traumatized that there's not even the ability to go back and try to recognize that there were people there saying the things that we're all saying now. There were people there saying them all along.
Right.
And to me, that was my saving grace. But I don't think other people really noticed in a large way. I think the gatekeepers did, which is why it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no place for anyone to do any of that work. And I do hope that people can find the wherewithal to look back and recognize that, people that have resisted in this world, there's a long line, of us goes all the way back, we've always existed. This is not new. But I also find, like, I see affirming friends who have affirming churches who love this worship music. And I'm like, you might want to look at that, because you're now bringing this music, even if you find that it can work in your space and with your theology today, at its core,
Yeah.
it's just a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not just a problem for me. It's a cultural problem.
Yeah.
And, but there's this, model that's been created, and everybody wants to feel like they are connected to the larger model somehow.
Yes. Yes. And not wanting to, that whole, like, not wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so if I can at least find the music, but, and that's something that I myself have, because I didn't grow up in the 70s or 80s,
Right.
for that matter.
Right.
Like, I came into it and the praise and worship music was all we did on
Yes.
Sundays. And
Yes.
so, there was a period of time where, I just wasn't interested in listening to anything that I grew up listening to. In my own deconstruction journey. And since then, kind of going back and revisiting as I prepared, the album that I'm working on right now that I'm finishing, really wanting to try to tap into the contemporary stuff that was trying to do that outreach stuff. The very few artists that were allowed to continue to do that during the late 90s, early 2000s. And also looking at the praise and worship music that I was, listening to. And, I think another piece of it, especially for the musicians that come through that world, there's this, like, needing to, at the very least, love what the music was doing, love the arrangements and see the musicality of the drummers or the keyboard players or whatever. But even that, like, for me, I just go, really? Like, that's craft? Mm-hmm. Just to kind of regurgitate that same sound over and over and over again. It needed to be this big, huge, on the CCM side, it's like the U2 rock thing.
Right.
I don't even know what this really overly elaborate, super duper clean production on the black side is even trying to be. Because it's just so big, but also small at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it just feels really lazy to me as a producer anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's just chasing that same sound over and over again. And those same kind of, fun little accidental chord things. But it's just...
With even less
lazy.
feeling each time.
Yeah.
It's odd. It's an odd model. And for music that is supposed to be about, like, immerse me, fill me, there's, like, a lot of volume, but not a lot of passion. Mm-hmm. And that's on both sides. That's on the white side and the black side. It's like, I don't want to hear nobody tell me nothing about Tasha Cobbs. I'm not listening to that. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lot of volume with no fire.
Yeah.
What y'all like are the changes.
Yeah.
You like the changes, you like the runs, but you can't tell me there's anything in that that's changing or helping, or you're not feeling anything from that. You just like the music. Yeah. And that's what I feel about all the white CCM and stuff. You like that it looks cool. That's basically all I've really got. You like that it's this trancey thing, but there's nothing. I feel nothing.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure that's my problem, because I shouldn't be looking for feelings. But but I am, because underneath the feeling is heart. That tells me where your heart is. And when I just see, like, vapid nasal sounds and lots of lighting and sound effects, I'm just...
Yeah.
And it's also just a problem as a model, because now I'm also seeing, and I'm going to critique it, these people that left the church that were musicians and then couldn't figure out what to do with themselves when they left because it wasn't sustainable anymore. Mm-hmm. Now taking worship pastor positions at more progressive churches. Mm-hmm. No. I don't like this whole model. It's all a problem. So they've created this entire industry now off of this. And something will happen. It will also crash. It will also end. And all that will come from it is something even worse.
When was your first time, and maybe you don't remember, maybe it was just always a part of your framework, but when people needed that whole elite gatekeeping thing, talked about anointing is something that some singers have, but others don't.
Oh, that's all from the earliest I can remember.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. Me
all-
too. Me too. Because I was trying to pinpoint it, and I just went, no, that's always been the case. Yeah.
Because you can be gifted.
Well, you can be talented.
Yes. But it doesn't
Then
mean,
you can be gifted. But it still doesn't mean, yeah.
yeah, that you're anointed. And it was all about that, like, and I appreciate my godmothers. It was just sing it like you mean it. That was all that was our conversation, there. But there was also a subscription to that idea, that we needed to be in prayer and we needed to, and at a certain point, and I was very young, I mean, like 15 or 16, and I just went, I'm not doing this. This is too much work.
Music
like this,
as ministry.
Yeah, no, and I never wanted to do that. Like,
Yeah.
can I just be a great singer?
Yeah.
Can I just sing?
The needing to fast and go into consecration before you
that
even
wouldn't
get up. Yeah.
Yeah, never. And no, that wasn't going to work for me. I was never going to do it. But it was certainly always in conversation. And the ways that they judged you. I mean, they would call you up to pray, and if your prayer didn't quite make up to snuff, wasn't quite up to snuff, then you clearly weren't, really as committed to your walk as you needed to be. And, all of these hoops. And
Yeah.
so by the time I was in my 20s, I was just like, I don't give a shit. I
Yeah.
just don't. I'm not jumping through all these hoops for y'all. I'm not.
Yeah. Because
It's
at
not this
a certain point, it requires your buy-in requires that you start judging,
Yes.
that you start being an asshole and start viewing other people as unworthy
Oh, yeah.
in order for you to, be elevated to that, I get to go.
I still can hear the mothers, in our little church, and we weren't as mean as other places, but I can still hear them. They ain't got no Holy Ghost. They ain't got no Holy Ghost. They do a little more fasting, a little more praying.
Yeah.
They ain't got no Holy Ghost. So yeah, it creates this whole hierarchy.
The other thing, and I had to look this up really quickly just to make sure I was right, because I remember there was a time when on the Christian side, Christian music side, the white side, it's so funny, the language, they have multiple formats. They still do. Whereas on the gospel side, it's still kind of just gospel.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that really does inform why it's hit a little harder on the black side of the music than on the Christian side.
Yes.
Because there are at least still, you've got your Christian AC, adult contemporary, you've got the Christian hit radio side. Right. It doesn't look like Billboard has like a special chart for like Southern Gospel, but Southern Gospel does have a lot of places where it can go still.
And they have their own chart.
They have their own charts. They're just not, Nielsen BDS.
Right.
And of course there are internet stations as well. And gospel does have the internet stations. Christian hip hop, of course, has its own thing that, has never really bubbled to like terrestrial radio. But yeah, on the when I look at the gospel chart, there really are just those 30, 40 positions. And, when all of the different textures and ways of being a gospel artist or a gospel group only get lumped in to one thing, it means that they're hit harder when things like this take over.
Well, and it's funny because for years, contemporary artists were the ones who paid the price for that on the gospel side, because there was no place for contemporary gospel to go.
Yeah.
Now the tables have turned, and so now contemporary gospel worship music,
contemporary worship, I would call it, because it's still not anything that would ever cross over onto the black R&B hip hop chart. Yeah, it's just not going to be viable.
But now the old sound is what's completely shut out.
Yes.
And so it's like, it's always an extreme. It's always an extreme in terms of how things get filtered.
Yeah. Yeah. And that piece is very weird for me to see young people, meaning people in their 20s, 30s, being the arbiters of the music and it not being something that is trying to do any kind of outreach or crossover or be something that just feels modern in a modern world. It's just modern in a modern church.
Yes. And I'll say this because the only one that I feel like has even attempted that that I loved especially was Lexi's record, and I will always shout that record out.
Yeah.
To me, it was like the last great contemporary gospel record.
And the very few that get to do it, Corinne Hawthorne's music is more modern sounding, but she also came from The Voice, and so she had that built in.
Yes.
There's places we can take her and do that. It's very few and far between.
Yes.
And they still have to throw a few of those worship songs on their project.
They do.
And Lexi had to do it as
Lexi
well.
did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about what made you decide you were going to listen to Maverick City music.
I kept seeing them on the iTunes chart at the top all the time. And I just wondered, what is that? And I didn't know what it was. I just saw that it was a group. I don't even think their picture was on the cover. It was one of their projects, or a few of their projects. It was like a few, and it was like Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. And I'm like, what is this? And so I finally went just out of curiosity to Spotify, and I looked at their bio. And their bio was it was written in an intriguing manner. We come out of nowhere, and our sound is something that's just not ever, that nobody else has. And when you experience this music, it's, something that's just unlike anything you've ever heard of before. And so I just went, okay. And I know that that's, a lot of times just how Christians talk about their experience, as artists anyway. And so you take it with a grain of salt. But the fact that it was up there, I just went, well, let me just see what this is about. I imagine it probably is like worship music, but maybe it's like a different take on the worship music. I was never the biggest Israel and New Breed fan, but there were things that I did like every now and then. And so I went, maybe it's in that vein, maybe there will be some things that I can get why people like it. And so I went and I listened. Started at the beginning. I was in that Volume 1 project, and I just didn't get it. It was nothing about it was anything different than what I'd ever heard. And so it made me look up this article. It's an interview that they did with Relevant magazine with two of the leaders. And what they are a worship group. And the entire premise is that they are very intentional about being more inclusive of Black people and women, probably and partially because all of them have at one point felt like the only one in these kinds of collectives, or have felt like they've not been able to access those kinds of collectives, the Hillsongs and and so, it feels like a reaction to being on the outside. And so they just decided to come together and make their own thing. And for whatever reason, I think all of them are bringing some built-in audience because they are respective praise and worship leaders at probably pretty large churches all around the country or maybe even globe. I haven't looked too much into who these people are because, the music just kind of says it. It's just, they're just doing what everybody else this day and age is doing in the realm of making music as Christian people in the church. But this article really put it all into context for me, just about who they are. The article is How Maverick City Music is Breaking the Worship Music Mold. Which again, those are just pretty big words. And then when you hear it, and then when you read this article and see what they're talking about, I just go, no, it's not. No, it isn't. But also I came away actually really disturbed by the framework that they're working with and how it then informs, because since this article was in May of 2020, they've become even bigger, and they're on the Stellars, and they're winning Stellar Awards, and they've kind of become the big Black Christian artist. And it doesn't seem like it's stopping. And so a few of the things in the article that initially triggered me just right out of the gate was this needing to differentiate themselves from gospel, needing to see themselves as outcasts because they allegedly, they do. They sound different. They don't sing in traditional gospel ways like we talked about earlier in this episode.
Which so few of the current artists do anyways. So.
Yeah, I found it very confusing. Like, okay, if this had been written in 1980, Yeah, 92 even. I'll give you the 90s. Like, if this had been written then, I go, yeah, sure. There really is a certain kind of way, a certain tone that an artist has to have, a certain timbre, a certain energy that you have to bring. You can't come in with some little teeny baby voice as a gospel singer. It's just, you have to sing full bodied and it has to come from a certain place. But today, everybody sings with these little teeny voices. And so this needs it. Just because I'm a black female singer, it doesn't mean I have to sound like Mahalia Jackson. That's a direct quote from one of the leaders. And I'm just like, Mahalia Jackson couldn't even get a hit on today's gospel radio. So what are you even talking about?
Well, and this bothered me. This is Tim talking now.
Yeah.
That was Ray. I have more of a pure, straight tone kind of voice. Okay. So Torrance Glenn posted on Facebook this past week and said, would y'all please stop saying pure when you really just mean plain?
Yeah.
And when I read that, I was like, I am so tired of this whole, because that's a thing that gets said about worship music. Well, when it's contrasted with other forms, it's like, well, it's more pure. It's pure. And I really dislike that. So was that music dirty?
Right. Well, she said grit and growl, when you have enough grit and growl in your voice. And she's probably thinking of the Kimberells of the world. But then to juxtapose that with like a Mahalia Jackson, I just go, that's all over the place. That's not even, so you don't even, that to me feels like a wrestling with racial identity or feeling black enough. And I've dealt a lot with that, like seeing that in especially predominantly white spaces, the kids that get called the Oreos or the kids that get, by other black people often, and that like taking that to your fucking grave as like the cross that you had to bear. And it's just like, stop it. Because on the flip side of that, you're going to get access to a lot more things as the articulate black person or as the black person with the pure straight tone. You're going to be palatable to white people in a way that other black folks aren't. And instead of figuring out how you connect with your blackness and with the black world, if you feel like, you're wrestling with that, instead of figuring out your place in that, just feeling like, well, I'm going to leave that aside and don't put me in that box because I'm special. I just find that so gross. And there's just such a problem with that. The other thing that they talk a lot about in the article is about their songwriting and the writing process, which I also just, having listened to the final product, I just am not impressed. I don't get what all this laboring about. But I also, though, do connect it to what we talked about earlier about that whole, like, feeling responsible for making music that's as universal as possible, that is going to be palatable for as many different congregations that hold a lot of different theologies, and needing it to not trouble the water so that, it can be, in as many churches as possible.
Well, the direct quote, you're writing language basically that the church is going to sing to God. That responsibility can be so heavy.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, for me, just too deep. Just stop it. Stop it. You're writing a song that a bunch of people are going to sing. You could literally get up and say Mary Had a Little Lamb and they'd be just fine.
Well, they talk about a song like How Great Is Our God being, like, everybody can sing that. Yeah. And that song isn't about anything.
It's a crappy song.
And yet they want to then say that there's all this freedom. God gives us so much freedom to express real emotion. And I just go,
Where is it? I haven't seen it yet. Where is it? Because I don't feel anything. It's internet
when I listen
emotion.
to what y'all do. I don't feel anything.
That's an
so
LOL.
Where's the emotion? Yeah.
It's an LOL and I'm crying on the internet. That's all that is. That's not real.
Yeah.
Stop it.
The biggest thing for me, though, in this article, and what really almost stopped me in my tracks, because I really got it on another level, what praise and worship music is doing in the black church world, is them not wanting to be categorized as gospel because they're black. And this is a direct quote. They said, Billboard tried to put it out as a gospel record. They're talking about their first project, because I was black and I was on it. And we were like, why is this gospel? Why do you categorize this as gospel? And it's not even anywhere along gospel lines. And since then, since this article, I feel like they've gotten over this. And they, I don't know if it's because the Stellars have called them or because they've started to, be honored in bigger ways by just being okay with being labeled as gospel.
Right.
They changed their tone a little bit. But just again, this need to be differentiated and this need to opt into. If you're saying then, because you start out saying that the praise and worship world, the CCM world, is very, very white, very exclusive. We're trying to bring some inclusivity into that, but don't categorize this as gospel. I don't want to be a part of this black thing just because I'm black. What that reads to me is you recognize this is a white supremacist world. This CCM world, the world of Christian music is white supremacy. And instead of wanting to eradicate that or tear it down, you just want your piece of it.
Well, yeah.
And they, if you look at their Instagram page or whatever, they post Black Lives Matter stuff. They still speak the language. But when I look at this, I just go, no, you're not really wanting to see anything change but to you be in it. Mm-hmm. You to have your piece of it. The last, I think, like at the very end, they talk about, we're writers at the end of the day. We don't just write one type of music. And again, I don't see it. I don't get it. I haven't heard it yet in what I've listened to. And it's, as someone who really likes music, I can usually find a lot that I like about it. The worship collective stuff, it just bores me. Yeah. It really bores. It's hard to get through. And I don't get the people who say they need it.
Yeah.
The people who say it doesn't feel like church without it. They need that music experience. And they seek out churches specifically for the type of praise and worship that they have and need it to be of a certain category. I won't even say of a certain level, of a certain quality, because it's not even necessarily about quality. It's just about type. Checking
all the boxes. Yeah.
They need the rock and roll stage. They need the rock and roll sound. They need to be big. They need,
Yes.
Did you have anything to say on that?
Well, I'm kind of really letting you take the lead on Maverick City because I'm not listening to them.
Yeah.
I'm not checking it out. I am so not interested.
Yeah.
I read this article and I just thought, I'm never listening to this because just the whole intention is antithetical to everything that I believe in. I just find the entire model, as I've said over and over in this podcast, I just find the entire model and the whole theology behind it problematic.
Yeah. And if I had read this article before I listened to it, I probably would have got it. Nope. Not doing it. But yeah, the people who say they need to have that experience, need to have praise and worship as a part of their church experience or as a part of their lives even.
Yeah.
I don't fully get what that is.
Well, and it's made it impossible to even visit a church, like on those rare occasions that we have gone. It makes it impossible for me to get through.
I don't want to have to get through that music.
I don't want to sit through the music.
Because 9 times out of 10, the worship leader is...
Fussy.
These songs, the way they sing these songs, it's just with such anger. And I don't know, like, even when I go back and listen to, like, a Caravans or Dorothy Love Coates or James Cleveland or, insert whatever traditional gospel that isn't allowed in the church anymore, I never got that they were mean.
No, you get heart.
Or that the music felt harsh or like they were, like... warfare, like they were in warfare. And that's what the music sometimes, especially when I feel like the black worship leaders are doing it can have a very war thing, or it's the white chicks.
Yeah
There's like no in between.
There isn't. And I just find it terrifying in the white spaces. Like the white spaces, watching just the masses of people sing these songs. It's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And so I just don't have any resonance for it. And it makes me sad that nobody's really looking at like what's underneath it and what it's really actually all about.
Yeah.
Because it's naive to me to accept that this is for God.
Yeah.
It's naive to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather take, old school stuff because that was actually for them. Mm-hmm. That was for them, and it was about them, and a collective experience. And I can get behind that. I can't get behind whatever this is.
Okay. So if Maverick City Music were actually outlaws,
they wouldn't exist.
If they were actually Mavericks on that level,
we wouldn't even know who they were.
Yeah, we wouldn't. They would not be getting big features.
Yeah, there's
major Christian magazines probably.
There's no redeeming anything in this model. And so that's, to me, like, if it were outlaw, it just would cease to be.
Yeah.
Everybody would be actually like writing just songs about their life experiences and not feeling like they needed to write, Harry Potter songs for Jesus. It just wouldn't be a thing. We'd actually, outlaw version would be them decrying it. That would be the outlaw version. For them to have a Leslie Phillips experience and say, God, we were really naive and we bought into this model when we were too young to know any better.
Yeah.
And we're leaving the church and we're going to go get, we're going to become massage therapists or something.
Yeah. And it would actually be like beyond elementary notions of Black Lives Matter. It would be talking about what it actually looks like to hold an anti-racist politic as a person of faith. Mm-hmm. And having really hard conversations then about, instead of trying to integrate into a white supremacist world, it would be deconstructing like how these churches uphold white supremacy,
yep.
The partnerships that they have with police, the partnerships that they have with the gatekeepers, the corporations, all the institutions that uphold racism.
Yes. Yeah.
And it would be inclusive beyond racial inclusivity or even including women. It would include LGBT people.
Yep. Yep.
And it would be figuring out how we detangle the theology to really start dealing with real life. Yeah. Real life, not just like, oh, I'm sad and I want to sing about being sad and God stepping in and filling the void. Like, that's not that's not real life.
Well, I think, and that's the other real problem I have with this model, because and it's multi-tiered, because I feel like for the praise and worship leaders, I feel like what this model does, particularly, and there's a reason these praise and worship leaders are the age that they are, because when their time is up, when this youth culture ends, mm-hmm. they don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And so, we have friends that are in their, late 30s, 40s, now without a place because they've reached the age of disinterest for the market. Mm-hmm. And so, most of these kids on that level, they don't go to college because church culture becomes the center.
Yeah.
And so when it all crashes, when they have a crisis of faith, when, they deconstruct, when they have a fall, when they realize they're gay, when they get divorced, whatever it is, they are left with nothing. Mm-hmm. No way to really reinvent themselves without an extra amount of work at the age that they are when it happens.
Yeah.
And so that's the other problem I have with this whole disinterest in anything outside of being a worshiper, because it disables them, for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very sick to me that they really get these kids younger and younger. I just finished Vicki Beeching's memoir, mm-hmm. Who was, one of the big writers of the early 2000s, big artists. And thankfully, she had gone to Oxford. Thankfully, she had a degree. She maintained other interests. She actually came into it with a certain amount of awareness of her identity. She just was working around it. Mm-hmm. But when it crashed, thank God she had that degree to fall back on, because she was able to write about other things and get jobs writing. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, she'd have been completely incomeless.
Yeah.
Because this is a revenue stream. And that's what I wish that people like Maverick City Music Group were more honest about, is that this is a revenue stream for them. This is not, it is not just about They just love the Lord and they're worshipers.
No,
make
they
money.
decided to come together to do this because they saw it as a model that
Yes.
other people were doing, other
Yes.
groups were doing, and making a lot of money doing.
Yes. Yes. And there is a buy-in when you do that to toe a particular party line.
Yeah.
And that's all I read in that article. I didn't read anything exceptional, despite all they're saying how different they are. I didn't see anything any different. And I saw another post from another gospel artist this morning, and she was saying in her post, like, all of you out here with public platforms, when you can't tell everything you believe, and you can't say everything you believe because it costs you relationships. And I was like, wow. So we're like also now telling people out in the world like how to be a part of this, and that is just toe a party line, even if you wonder, even if you think it, even if you and that's what I find so terrifying about this whole, it's a business model, and I wish they'd just be more honest about that.
And how is that truth if we're supposed to worship in spirit and truth, and you're being fundamentally dishonest? But no, to go back to what you said, I mean, the sustainability of it, I mean, just period. And I know we're going to do another episode talking about just the difficulty of being an artist and how difficult things like touring are on the body.
Yes.
And we need more honesty around, it is hard getting up every Sunday, leading worship for 2-3 services every week, and having to do that over and over again. It is on that level something that as you get older, you don't want to keep doing.
No. I can't imagine doing what I did in my 20s today.
Yeah.
Cannot imagine it.
Yeah.
8 o'clock service.
Yeah.
Singing. 11 o'clock service. Sing. No.
Yeah.
No. Rehearsals all week. No.
And so the outlaw version would be figuring out how making music as a person of faith can be something that is sustainable and that everyone can actually do and enjoy doing from youth into old age.
Yes. Well, because I think ultimately the thing that has so ruined the music is the fact that it is all now tightly controlled by a pastor. A pastor who's going to dictate when it's gone too long. A pastor who's going to dictate what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And so these kids don't have any concept of creative freedom.
Well, no, because they're all too busy trying to package what pastor said in his sermon and make it a song.
Yep. Which is the only reason they're actually, finger quotes, laboring over these lyrics is because they aren't even their thoughts. They're having to figure out how to just translate it into a song, something they've already heard. And so, yeah, these kids wouldn't know what to do with creative freedom if they ever fell into it. They would feel completely lost and probably incapable of creating for a while.
Well, on that cheery note,
Just saying.
yeah, send us your thoughts. Let us know what y'all think. If you love it and want to defend it, we probably won't care too much. But
You might want to just have your own podcast, to be honest.
Yeah, otherwise, we'd love to hear what you think. Where can people find you, Tim?
Twitter and Instagram at Tim Dillinger, Dillinger, and godsmusicismylife.substack.com.
And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Ray Curenton, RayCurenton. Until next time.
Bye.